Welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns.
Hello, this is Kim Howerton with Keto Life Support, and this is episode 161. Today, I'm going to tell you a little story, just a little check-in, a little update on Kim, where my head's been at, some struggles I've been going through. And yeah, that's it. Just peeling back the curtain a little bit and letting you know about a mistake I made. And just so you know, I recorded this as a video originally and then thought, oh, right, podcast, duh. So I might say video referring to what you're listening to, but hopefully all my listeners are smart people. I mean, I know you are. So you know when I say video, you can mentally insert podcast if you're listening to it through the podcast format. All right, enjoy.
A little update about what's been going on with me. So this will not be the content part of this video. This is a check-in. So I think I owe it to people to keep checked in when I have something to check in about. So a couple of months ago, I got this brilliant idea to do a content video about a company called Optavia. And it's basically a close to starvation approach to weight loss that has gotten it, like it has some popularity. Anyway, I was like, let me do an experiment because I like to do experiments and show you guys what it's like to live the way that you'd have to live to do this. What are the pros and cons and what's the nutrition, and just get real geeky on it. That was the idea. So I did that. And so this video is not that. There's going to be a separate video on that. But then I noticed over the past few months that I haven't been as okay as I like to be. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this for 10 days. I'm going to do this very low calorie packaged food program thing for 10 days. Then I'm going to do maybe a protein sparing modified fast for 10 days. I was like, I'll do a month of like very, very low calorie as like a, compare and contrast. And I'm going to be honest here. Just you and me, right? No, nobody else, just you and me. There was a part of me that was like, and maybe I'll get these damn 10 pounds off that I'd like to lose. Just going to be perfectly honest. Now, I will say that the idea for the videos came before that desire, but desire is like lingering, lurking. It's lurking in the back of my brain. And as I came into spring being on the horizon, I was like, oh gosh, I've got a lot of events where people will see me in person. And my brain was like, oh, you should look thinner when people see you, not when I see them. Anyway, but when they see me. And there's a thing. There's just a thing. It's implanted, right? And I worked very hard to acknowledge how far I've come, to be conscious that my weight is not my worth, that I made a choice to maintain this weight, which is very doable for me, not a weight that is hard for me to maintain, right? Like I've made choices along the way, and just suddenly I just had a moment. And trust me, I am fully human. Any of you who thought I was perfect have been watching someone else's channel. And so, yeah, it crept in the back end of my brain and was like, oh, that would be a nice side effect of doing this little experiment if I could, look a little leaner. So I got the products. I did the 10 days. Again, this video is not about the product, but it's important. We'll get there. Basically, the program, I should back up. Those of you that don't know this, I have a diagnosed eating disorder. I was diagnosed with binge eating disorder many years and years and years and years, decades ago. And over the past decade, I've worked very hard to quiet the voices in my head that suggest I do things that aren't the greatest for myself and my health and my mental health around food. So I've gotten to a place in the past, especially 2 years, where I felt a lot of flexibility, a lot of freedom. Like, yeah, I know it's there in the background, but I don't really struggle on a day-to-day basis with the oppressive food thoughts. It's more like they're irritating, but not oppressive. And I can easily say, no, we're not doing that, right? When a thought comes up, I can be like, well, that's interesting. I'm having that thought. I'm not doing that. And it's not a painful thought. It's not it doesn't feel like a compulsion, right? And I felt so happy about that. So when I started on my health journey, 7 years ago, it got better and better and better and better. And then I've just hit like a really nice stride. But I think I wasn't aware that probably around January of this year, I hit a bit of a rough patch. Just generally rough. Like it wasn't about food so much, but this wasn't I think it's like winter and just, it wasn't the greatest month, right? And I felt the rub. I felt like I was struggling a little bit. I was like, I'm fine. And in the midst of that, I decided to take on this experiment. And I have to say that, like, man, I was apparently a little cocky because now I'll go into the whole, like, what was in the experiment, but basically just imagine eating way too little at every meal and throughout the day, and most of it being highly processed foods. That was kind of the way it goes with this program. So during these 10 days, I did the Optavia program. I was cranky, hangry, irritable, and I was experiencing the worst level of food obsession that I had experienced in 7 years, maybe. I mean, 6, right there at the beginning, it's a little off and on. But since I was felt some relief from some of the worst of my eating disorder. I'm going to stop and say, I was diagnosed with an eating disorder, but there's actually a whole spectrum. So at some point, the symptoms and the criteria get bad enough that it's diagnosable eating disorder. But there's this whole spectrum over here that's not diagnosable or diagnosed by a lot of people that is called disordered eating. So you might have the tendencies, but not the full-blown disease, right? And so just because you haven't been diagnosed with an eating disorder doesn't mean you don't have disordered eating. Just going to say, so I don't want to take away from anyone who might say, yeah, that sounds like me. Yeah, that sounds like me. Yes, I obsess about food, all these things. Like there's a whole spectrum here. You don't have for this to apply to you, you don't have to be in the fully diagnosed arena. So I did these 10 days, and in these, probably by about day 7, I was noticing that pretty much my thoughts the whole day were about food. When can I eat next? What am I going to have? And I didn't go off plan. I actually stuck with the plan, but there's some choices in the plan. You can have this crappy packaged food or that crappy packaged food or this other one. There's many crappy choices for you. And so it was just like, do I want this one or do I want that one? This one, I want that one. And, setting a timer. They told me to set a timer for the next time I could eat because your hunger is very disconnected. It's just loud and in charge, or large and in charge, right? The hunger is just front and center. And it never really goes away. Like you sort of soothe it slightly for a minute, but then it comes. So it's just there. And part of my healing journey was learning how to eat so that my hunger wasn't overwhelming me all the time. And now I'm like, oh gosh. So anyway, I get to the end of the 10 days and I was like, whoo, glad I did that, done and over with, and not doing that again. Now I'm going to move on to the protein sparing modified fast portion of this journey. But day 1, I was like, I'm just starving. This is not, I can't. And just the food obsession was really strong. And I thought, okay. I need a refeed. I need a couple of days at maintenance intake just to calm my system down and tell it that I'm going to be okay. And that didn't work. It was sort of we'll just let the cougar in the house to let him know that he's safe here. It's like attack. Now, did I fully like binge? Did I go into my old behaviors of feel like complete out of controlness? No, I didn't. So the good news here is within a certain parameter, I have remained fairly in control of my actions. What has continued to suck are the thoughts in my head. I have not felt this disordered in my thinking in years. And I have not been this internally mean to myself in years. And it's all wrapped up together with feelings of low self-worth, thoughts of like self-harm, I would say, not in terms of doing something violent to myself, but binging to me is a thought of self-harm, right? Wanting to eat certain foods that don't really always appeal to me anymore, a drive towards more processed foods. And the thing that I've had to, and some of the behaviors that used to bring me a lot of comfort and help my condition was like being diligent about tracking. And even that has felt like, no, like the 4-year-old with the coat, no, like I don't want it. And so I've had to find my way here. And the reason that I'm coming to you to talk about this now is it took me like 2 months to figure out what was going on. It's embarrassing to admit that. It's embarrassing to admit as a coach, right? That I'm like, why am I so effed up? I don't understand why I'm so effed up. I must be really depressed. I was like, searching. Then there was like, maybe it's medical. Let me get a lot of blood work done. What's happening with my thyroid? Why am I, like just what is happening? And this week, I was just driving in the car and I was like, Kim, this started when you did that Optavia or Optavia, whatever. Yeah, I did this to myself. Yeah, I got a little cocky. I thought, what could the harm be of 10 days of this horrible idea? Horrible. Now, physically, there have been no repercussions. Like I was like, it's not literally poison for 10 days. I'm going to survive that. But what I didn't think about, I thought about metabolic adaptation. I thought about, nutritional issues. I thought about all that stuff and was like, that is an acceptable risk to me. No big, going to be fine. The thing I didn't think about was the incredibly important mental health aspect. And it's so weird that I didn't put it together, you guys. It's terrible. This is like a physician whose children have broken arms for like weeks and they're like, oh, I thought he seemed fine. Like I literally grew up with a kid whose dad was an orthopedic surgeon and he walked on a broken leg for weeks before finally he got treated because his doctor was like, walk it off. I mean, his dad was like, walk it off. You're fine. Because I guess like, when it's in your family, you don't take it anyway. So yeah, if any of my clients who had past histories of binge eating disorder or any kind of eating disorder, bulimia, anorexia, any of it came to me and said, yeah, I'm thinking I'm going to try this thing. I'd be like, absolutely not. Are you insane? What is wrong with you? Well, I would be nicer to them, but like, no, don't do that. And instead I was like, I'll be fine though. I'll be totally fine. You guys, I've not been okay. I've not been okay. Like for those of you that have been like, she's not really doing a lot of videos and stuff, and she seems a little weird. I don't know. I don't know how well I was masking, but I've not been that great. And I finally, and the thoughts of like, oh, the cruise is coming up. I want to lose a little weight. Oh, this is happening. I want to lose, I'm going to be on stage. I want to lose a little weight, right? Like all those thoughts are very loud in my head. Because let's be honest, you guys can see my body, but for the most part, you can't see my sanity within reason, right? So I can pretend to be sane on a stage. And the thought is, oh, if I'm a little thinner, you'll think better of me as a weight loss coach, right? That's some bullshit. I'm sorry for my language, but that is some total BS because I'm not that kind of weight loss coach. I'm not. I don't want that for you. Why am I doing that for me? sanity comes first, not the size of your pants, right? Food sanity comes first. And so I'm here to say like, oh, okay, I finally get it. Like I find like the penny dropped. I get it. I've been in a hamster wheel of a spin cycle of my eating disorder. And well, part of me is proud to say like, no, I have not gained 20 pounds. I have gained 2 pounds, but that's just kind of, normal fluctuation. But, it's like, hey, that's not the main point. The main point is it's been chaotic in here, and that's not been okay with me. And so I have to say that this week has been much better. Why has it been much better? Because I finally woke up and thought, what is actually going on, Kim? And it all like became very clear. So I guess I just wanted to make this video to be like, hey, this is what I did because I got a little cocky, and I totally underestimated how bad it would be for me to not put my mental health first. And that's what happened. So that's where we are. So now I'm on like a journey for stability. I'm on, just getting the things in place that I know need to be in place for me to feel food sane. And so far this week, it's been going really well. It's not, I don't want to explain this. Sorry. It's not that I wasn't doing a lot of these things over the past several months. The real difference is I stopped and I said, hey, you got to reset your expectations. You got to like make stability and sanity your number one priority above anything else. And once I did that and made that commitment, everything got a lot calmer. And so hopefully you'll be interested in the video that I'm going to do about my Optavia experience because, well, it's got to count for something. And I think it'll be fun and interesting. But I've been like putting off even doing that video because I was a little traumatized. And then I'm here to say that like, hey, this is a lifelong journey for those of us struggling with these issues. And I'm included. And it's my job to go first, right? So if I'm not willing to admit that things have been a little sucky and I have not been prioritizing my mental health space for a while, and I was in some denial about the importance of doing so, then, maybe that's something all you needed to hear about. Not just because like I need to be whipped, like, this is not a like, I must apologize. It's not that. It's like, hey, honesty comes first in sobriety. And being honest with yourself and with others. And so I got to be honest about where I've been. And that's where I've been. So if you can relate, or if you have questions, or if you want like to ask me questions about my experience that you want to make sure I include in the next video about or anything, put it in the comments. Let me know. I will talk to you about it. So that was me telling you what's been going on. And I appreciate all of you for listening. I appreciate your support. And onward and upward. All right, guys, I'll see you soon. Bye. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're part of the Keto fam. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.